What's up, everyone? Welcome back to Life After Strange. It's been a longer hiatus, but we are back, and I have the absolute pleasure of going to True Colours, and the first person from True Colours who is coming on here is Anastasia Davidson. Anastasia plays Diane Jacobs in True Colours. Anastasia, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolute pleasure to have you, and I loved the background you set up. I couldn't have expected anything better. Because I've watched some of your interviews with Webb and Katy, and I've seen that you have the Deck 9 stuff in the background. So I was preempting that, and I was like, she's obviously going to come equipped for it, but you went even better to have Haven Springs in the background. So I'm really excited about that. And we're on this show. It's a bit of a reformat. I know a lot of people have watched this show for 24 episodes, and it's kind of changed up a little bit. And with this, I kind of changed up the beginning part, which, Anastasia, I think you will know in terms of where I'm going to start is that we're going to take a page out of Dr. Lynn's playbook. And we're going to start with Anastasia. How are you feeling today? Angry, scared, sad, happy? Which one?
Today, I can honestly say that I'm feeling really happy. I'm stoked to be here, and I'm excited to be chatting with you, Adnan, and yeah, happy.
That's perfect. And you have that shirt, by the way, as well. Did they give you that, Deck 9?
They did, yes. And I almost wore it today, and now I'm regretting not wearing it.
No, I think that's like enough for me to incentivize going into work with them. For them to give you that shirt, so I was like, that's really cool to give them to the actors. But like I said, very easy to start, and we're kind of going to go into you at this point. So I thought it was quite interesting when I read up on your background. You were born in Burlington, Vermont. I do apologize if I do butcher a bit of the American states. I'm not really hugely familiar as someone from the Brits. But you're currently in Colorado and Denver, I assume?
Yes, I'm actually right outside of Denver in Broomfield, Colorado. It's between Boulder and Denver.
Perfect. I got that right. So as we're talking about that, I kind of wanted to bring it up because your career is heavily in theatre from what I saw in the background. A lot of early credits, but a big background in theatre. And I kind of wanted to know, did you come to Colorado from Vermont because of the theatre scene?
I was born in Burlington, Vermont, but I moved around a lot growing up. So I moved all around the East Coast to New England area, mainly growing up in Massachusetts and Connecticut. And then I hopped around for school. So I went to undergrad and graduate school in Pennsylvania. And then after graduate school, I made my way out here to Colorado. And it was a decision that my husband and I both made. He had a really great opportunity. He works in tech. And so he had a great opportunity out here in Colorado. And after I graduated getting my MFA in acting, I was thinking, oh, maybe I want to go back to New York City for a little bit, maybe Chicago, LA. I had all these thoughts. And then Denver came up, and it was a pleasant surprise moving out here and finding how amazing scene is on the Front Range. There's just a wonderful community of people and a lot of theater opportunities. So that was really exciting.
It's very fascinating. And I love that, obviously, when I speak to a lot of actors, they move around from state to state. And with how big the country of America is anyway, you obviously moved to Pennsylvania, you had Vermont, then you moved into Colorado. And I imagine that you love the kind of setting where you live right now in terms of it's quite hilly, isn't it? Obviously, based on my experience of what I've seen from True Colours and how heavily inspired it is, I imagine you must love the setting and how peaceful and like quiet it is as a town.
Absolutely. Haven Springs is a very realistic representation of what many of the Colorado mountain towns look like. When we moved out here about 5 years ago, I had never been to Colorado. I'd never been really, I had been to California, but I hadn't really been west. So I didn't quite know what to expect. And New England and Pennsylvania, it's more rolling hills and farmland, and there's a lot of water. Out here, you have the Rockies, which are magnificent. And our neighborhood has a beautiful view of the mountains. And this morning they were all snow-capped, and the trees are starting to change colors, and it's just quite beautiful. So I definitely see the benefits to both East Coast beauty and now the beauty of Colorado and the big Rocky Mountains.
So we're talking about speaking of theatre, there's so much to talk about that, but when I was digging through your profile, I also cross-referenced with Erika Mori, who we'll bring up later in this episode, but she has a big credits in theatre, but this was her first official credit on Life is Strange True Colours. And from my basis, Colorado is not a huge town, so I have to ask, did you know Erika Mori before this project? Because a lot of your photos suggest that you know Erika Mori before this project.
Yes, I did. I knew Erika. I believe she had already been signed on for True Colors when I had met her, but I didn't know that. And we are ensemble members at the same theater company here in Colorado, the Butterfly Effect Theater of Colorado. And so we had met each other, we had hung out a little bit, but we've actually, this is the first, True Colors was the first time that we worked together. We had never been in a show together before this. So yes, to answer your question, we did know each other, but we hadn't worked with each other yet. And it was, yeah, just amazing to be able to work with such a beautiful person and friend.
Obviously, like the project's NDA, she's working on it quietly, not telling you. But when you get to that point, you turn up on set and you see a friendly face, that must have like blown your mind. Just sort of be like, she's actually here.
It was a really great day. Yes. I walked in and she was standing in the mocap room, and we both just, we didn't know each other extremely well, but we just really hit it off. And knowing that I had someone in the room that I respected so much as a person, but also as an actor, and the fact that we would get to do a lot of stuff together moving forward was really exciting.
Absolutely cool. Absolutely cool. And we will address Life is Strange, True Colors, and Diane Jacobs as we kind of move on to this. But I kind of wanted to bring up one thing, which was whilst I was researching for this, Jonathan Zimmerman, before the game came out, he wrote something about Diane Jacobs, like a character spec. And in that, he calls her an outsider in Haven and did well to fit into the local culture, integrating herself into the community. I wanted to know that you must have immediately somehow connected with this character owing to your own journey to kind of get to Colorado. Those kind of things must have literally resonated with you straight away.
Absolutely. I'm sure we'll talk in a little bit more about the character of Diane and how she evolved. But when I learned that her character had taken the route of being a transplant and coming to Haven Springs from DC, I definitely could relate to her on that level. And she's also a very family-oriented person from what we know in the script. And so I could certainly relate to her on that level as well, because none of my family is out here and they're all a plane ride away and we're all scattered across the states. And so I miss them. And that is probably the one living out here in Colorado, is that I'm not close with my family.
Perfect. And obviously, I feel like we're going to have to address it, which is True Colors. How did you get involved with this project? What was the audition process like? Take us through that process.
Absolutely. Cool. So I originally auditioned for this project in the summer of 2018. And I was called in through my agent and through the casting director, Sylvia Gregory Casting and Radical Artists Agency. And I remember going in, I didn't really know what it was about. Like, we had very limited information. I read for this one role. I didn't know what it was. I ended up getting called back for that role and then not hearing anything for a while. I found out from Webb Pickersgill later on, who is the performance director for True Colors, that the role I was reading for was the role of Riley. And I had no idea. So I originally read for Riley, and then I was called in for Diane Jacobs. And of course, it's all under different names. You don't actually get the name of your character in your specs. But I was called in for Diane, and I had a callback for Diane, which was super exciting because pre-COVID, all callbacks took place at Deck Nine's studios. So we were in the mocap room. I got to work with Webb, which is a great experience. He's wonderful in terms of working with actors and giving them a good amount of time during their callback and audition to really get the best work out of his actors. And so I had a callback for her. And then again, I didn't hear anything for a while. And I was signed on for another project that I can't really talk about right now. It's still under NDA, but I was signed on for another project with Deck Nine. And I was there doing a table read for it. And it was an initial day, and Webb came up to me and said that they were going to be offering me the role of Diane Jacobs. And it was a really good day. Especially for an actor, like, actors understand that when you actually book a gig and then at that gig you're offered another one, it was just a fantastic day.
Yeah, it sounds like a dream scenario, because I get from a lot of actors saying that we never always kind of like come forward with how many rejections we get. And it's always like you have that opportunity, you land it, but the amount of rejections you have to take. And in that circumstance where you've got a job and you're already applying for one, I completely understand it. But I was very surprised that you were auditioning for Riley at first, because I know the actor who played Riley, and I feel like I'm Danielle Verata. I feel like I've butchered her name a little bit. She was involved with their game from before Storm. She played Rachel Amber's mocap. So she'd obviously worked with them prior to this. And I thought they had automatically casted her as Riley, but I'm very surprised that they brought you in to do Riley's lines first, kind of like audition for that, and then it was later on you came in for Diana. But that's really cool. And I like you mentioned as well, this is heavily NDA'd, and even the code name of the game as well, heavily NDA'd whilst I was looking for it. But I kind of wanted to ask you, they must have given you an early character spec and you get the kind of vibe of like the character you're voicing. What was kind of like the initial impressions just reading that and then picturing the character in your head?
For Diane, originally, she was going to be, I believe, the owner of the record store where Steph is working in Haven Springs. And maybe owner, maybe just boss, but she was some kind of radio DJ and she had this record store and she was Steph's boss. So originally that was Diane. She was always in a leadership role. She always came across as very intelligent, very grounded. And she also had much more of a relationship with Officer Pike in the beginning scripts, which was pretty juicy. And there's still like whispers of it throughout True Colors and a little bit of hinting there, but it was much more flushed out. And so I remember in my original audition and callback, one of the scenes was almost like a date between Diane and Pike. And I may have been reading with the actor who played Jason Pike at the callback. I can't quite remember. It's all such a blur, and it was a while ago at this point. But yeah, so that was originally Diane. And then, they actually had her animation already kind of drawn up. So I could see her, I believe in my callback, I could see roughly what she was going to be looking like. And then of course, not her face, but her outfit changed a bit and her demeanor and the rest. Obviously her character made a big change in the writing, but that was original Diane.
That is fascinating because like it makes a bit more sense because like I saw those kind of things where when you play the game, you see Pike come a bit more involved where he's like he's just like arrests Alex, and there's obviously I feel like it was more beyond just the Typhon influence of like he was scared. I felt like maybe there was something there with the character, and even more fascinating that she was actually different. I love when they change things. Obviously, it must be like so many rewrites and process changes, but it's fascinating that that's how you audition for something and then you see the character change during development as well, and something like that happens. But you mentioned it as well before, and obviously I love snooping in this kind of in these scenarios. But with that, you've done work in film, TV, commercials, a lot of things as actors usually do, but nothing in mocap until I looked at the unannounced project, which was on your resume. And obviously we can't talk about it because it's heavily NDA'd, but I just wanted to know, was that project you were working on first before this, or were you working on True Colors?
It was around the same time. So they were almost happening simultaneously, and they were both my very first experiences with mocap, not with voiceover obviously, but with mocap and with the helmet, the suit, all the things. So yeah, they were my first.
Well, that's really cool. But it must have been quite, obviously I don't want to get in trouble like going the NDA, but more in the sense of if we focus on the mocap, it must be nice to transfer the skills back and forth in two very close projects. I know actors who work on one mocap project and then they don't have one for a while and they wait, and obviously maybe you just kind of want to get involved in it, but then you have these two projects that are running and you can kind of jump back and forth. Did you find that really valuable in terms of just bouncing back and forth and really honing the motion capture side of your acting?
You know, you're right. That's a great point. I hadn't really thought about it, but it was helpful to be able to consistently be improving and learning and taking it all in and using what skills I was learning on one project and taking them to the other and vice versa. That was absolutely the case. I hadn't thought about it before, but yes.
Okay. Yeah, I got a little bit deep on that, so we'll kind of just stick with the mocap at this point, because I love the mocap suits as well, and you obviously get to put one on, and you also get to put the facial dots on. I feel feel like I'm talking like a layman with some of these speaks, but you get to put the dots on for the facial recognition. What was the experience like just putting the suit on, getting the dots and getting in just trying it out?
It was super cool. I haven't been much of a gamer, although I'm getting more deeply invested in the whole community now, of course, after these games. And I played all of Life is Strange, the original, all the way through, and I played Before the Storm. But my husband is a huge gamer. And so he almost understood how exciting this actually was more than I did, which I'm kind of glad about, because I may have put a lot more pressure on myself if I really understood just how amazing this all was. So when I put on the suit originally, Eric had shown me pictures of different folks working behind the scenes on video games, and he was saying, this is what you're going to get to wear and this is what it will look like. So when I went in and actually got to put on the suit for the first time, it was very exciting. And then we have a whole team of people there at Deck 9 who are helping us out putting the dots on the suit, because originally you don't have any of the placement of the dots on your suit. It's just this little like Velcro bodysuit, and then they do the dot placements for you after it's on. And one of my favorite things is getting my face dotted. For some reason, when I'm working on film or commercials, I love getting my makeup done. It just feels good. It's like getting your hair washed, or I don't know, hair blown out. I don't know if you know how great that is or not.
Well, I mean, I've done it a couple of times myself just to make myself feel like a Hollywood celebrity, but I get the vibe
right. So putting the facial dots on feels really good. They usually do a little bit of brush makeup on your face, and when you're shooting, lots of times you're there kind of early in the morning, like 8 or 9. So you go in with a freshly washed face, and then you sit there and they cover your face with a little bit of makeup, then they do a little bit of powder, then you get to have the little dots on. So it just feels really nice and pleasant.
I can imagine. And with that as well, I have to ask you, what's the thing that you don't like about the mocap suit? I have very different experiences from actors.
I would say there's a little, when you zip it up, it comes all the way to about here, and it gets a little rough. And this for me is a little sensitive spot on my body. And so it just starts to like irritate you after you've had it on for a while. It gets a little itchy right there. So I'd say maybe that. And also I like to keep my helmet super tight. It's up to the actor how tight you want to have that on your head, but you've got the camera out in front and it can get pretty heavy. And so I prefer to keep it nice and snug. But because of that, if you have it on for about 4 or 5 hours, it gets a bit much after a while. It definitely starts to hurt your head.
Very interesting perspective. I usually get some actors saying that they find it very hard to pee in it, or which is including that they get stuck when they sit down on something because it's Velcro. So sometimes they get stuck on something and they have to get pulled away.
That's a good point. Yeah, that does happen. And you know, you have to ask to go to the bathroom, and like any other gig when you're mic'd and everything all set, and turn off the mic and take it all off. So that is a bit of a process, but that didn't come to mind originally. So maybe it's not that bad for me.
Well, yeah, but either way, your experience is quite interesting with the mocap suit. And I always have to ask those questions. I just like to see other people's perspectives. And we're in the mocap as well, and I kind of want to step into the shoes of Anastasia here. We're arriving first day on the set of mocap at Deck 9's in-house studio. What was going through your head when you turned up that day?
Oh gosh, I was nervous. I was excited. I was all the feelings. Deck 9 has a super cool studio, and when you walk into their lobby, you can see all of the awards that they've won for their previous games, which is really neat. They have like a display case, and and posters up of Before the Storm and their awards. So that is simultaneously amazing and intimidating, walking into that building. And then you go back and they have a really nice, it's a tiny little room, but it's an actor prep room. And that's where you get into your mocap suit, and they have snacks in there and all sorts of things to make you feel comfortable and prep. And then they move you into the mocap room where you get dotted up. And it's just such a wonderful team of people that are so supportive and so there to help you in whatever way they can. And so being there that first day, I just remember thinking, what a beautiful group of humans I got to work with. And it was a wonderful experience.
Absolutely. And a beautiful bunch of human beings, including our next point, which is obviously going to be the True Colors performance director, who is Webb Pickersgill. Of course, I know Webb snoops through these channels, and Webb is genuinely a great human being as well for that, with no bias intended at that. But I kind of wanted to speak to you because he's your main source of contact for this. He is the performance director. What was it just like, generally speaking, in terms of going in there, working with him on the collaboration of Diane and bringing that character to life?
I love working with Webb. I think from day one, I remember going in, and this harkens back to auditions and callback, but Webb is really interested in Meisner and the Meisner technique, which is something that I studied a lot in graduate school. It's the Meisner technique. There's something called repetition, where actors talk back and forth, just repeating different phrases that they're noticing in the other actor. And it's really helpful to get actors out of their own head and focused on their acting partner, so that really what you're doing is listening actively and reacting to whatever they're giving you. And Webb, from the very first callback, he had us do repetition in the room. And I just remember geeking out massively because I missed doing that work, and I missed grad school. And at this point, I think I was about 2 years out from grad school. So I was really excited to be able to do that in the room with Webb, and so glad that he was bringing that sort of work into this video game medium. So that was really exciting. And then as far as working with him as the performance director, specifically for Diane, I love how open he is and how willing to try new ideas he is. He comes in, he knows the scene so well, he knows where he wants to go with it, he has ideas for blocking with it, he has ideas for intentions and objectives that he'll give you, but it's not like it's his way or the highway. If I had an idea that I said, like, maybe could we try this one on one take? He was always like, sure, let's do it, because that might be the winning take. So it's really wonderful working with someone who's so collaborative and so open to taking in new ideas and not shutting things down and just, saying like, let's try it. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. We'll use the other one.
No, it's really interesting to hear, because obviously he gained a lot of experience from working before Storm's mocap. He was always there from the sessions I heard with the mocap actors, that he would always kind of be the person that was there. And obviously he's moved into a big role of this, moving away from the game director and before Storm to become the true performance performance director. So that's quite interesting to hear of you, and that he gave you flexibility and freedom. But like, kind of digging with him a little bit more in terms of that you're in these sessions, obviously there was going to be like a rule of thumb that he's your source of contact. Were there any kind of scenes where he pulled you up on something and kind of like really hammered you down to get something out of you, like the best kind of performance? Were there any kind of like interactions, in terms of like some of that stood out in terms of feedback he gave you, and you were like, oh, I didn't think about that, and like I can kind of bring it out in this performance?
Sure. Yeah, that's a great question. I think with Diane, I tend to be a lot more bubbly than she is. So one thing Webb really helped me out with was finding how grounded she is, and also finding that road of how reserved she can be. I think that I tend to kind of wear my heart on my sleeve and show a lot of emotions in my face. And he was very helpful in that she needed to be pulled back a little bit more and talk a little bit slower and kind of have a more calculated way to her responses and reactions to people, versus me where I just want to respond right away and I'm just going off of it. But Diane as a person, she's catching herself from doing that sort of reaction. She doesn't want to do that. She needs to be more calculated and reserved, especially with how her story goes. So he was very helpful in finding that nuanced bit.
I can imagine, because obviously Diane's a completely different character from your personality. It's one of those things we'll dig into a bit more about tapping into where you did, and we'll dig into that later. But in that quickly as well, did you talk about mannerisms? Because obviously one of the things for me with True Colors, like especially with Erika Mori's character, you see her move the glasses, you see her wipe her tear. It's so advanced more with Life is Strange, and the mocap was such a big selling point for me, especially in this. But with Diana, were there moments where he like really wanted you to kind of like move hands, kind of like, was there anything that stood out in terms of that?
There were some moments where he had suggested, and I think it worked really well for the character, having arms crossed. Or having arms folded in front, kind of down, just to give the sense of how closed off she really is. Someone who's willing to share a lot is going to be super open and lead with their chest and their heart and have their hands down at their sides. Whereas Diane, Webb helped me find a little bit more of a closed off physicality with her, which I think worked well.
Right, that makes sense. And I'm not going to. We can talk about Webb all day long. And I've talked about him on my other podcast and he's heard it as well. But I kind of want to move away from him because obviously even with my kind of reviews, I gave him so much praise, but he has a very wonderfully talented team behind him. And you obviously would have worked with them. And I'm kind of referencing them here. I want to kind of give them a shout out in terms of Caitlin, Toby, Ellie, Natasha, and Corwin. And Corwin was his producer, I believe, in the mocap with him. And obviously Webb is that kind of authority where it's the true performance director. He's going to kind of give you direction. But I saw some of the calls where Corwin was on it. Was there any moments where he would chime in, give you something that you didn't expect? And with that in itself as well, these other people over there, they must have made the atmosphere very great on mocap set because they were technicians and doing all the other bits. It must have kind of really helped you settle in quite well.
Yes. I can't remember any specific moments where Corwin chimed in on character type notes, but Corwin is amazing and he is just one of the most supportive people, and he acted as my point person throughout all of this. So if I ever needed to contact someone with a question that I had about the character or the story, I would email Corwin or text Corwin. And in the room, he's just so supportive. Just knowing that he is there behind all the screens and everything watching, it made me feel more comfortable, and he keeps us on schedule. He has such an important role, and it's amazing how he can be so supportive to the actors. I think it's just such a wonderful trait that he has. The other folks that I worked with primarily when I was in the room were Caitlin and Toby. And Caitlin usually dotted up my suit for me and had me do all my getting ready and doing T-poses and everything. She's a joy. She just was so bubbly and bright and always laughing, which was so nice. And Toby did a lot of my facial dots. And so I think when I was there, it may have been some of his first time doing the makeup and the dots. And so he was learning as we went, and he got so damn good at it. And in the beginning, he would be like, I'm just going to add a little bit of powder here. And he was just so calm, which was amazing. And one thing that I will say, when I originally had all my dots done, they have a template that they use. Yep. So they have your face on a screen, and then they need to match your face that day to match up with what they have on the screen. And for some reason, when I originally did my template for my dots, I tend to raise this eyebrow a lot, an odd amount. And I think I must have not been fully relaxed when they originally did my template because this eyebrow was raised. And so every time I got my dots done, they would do these and they would be way too high. And then they would have to go in, erase them and do them lower on that specific eyebrow. And by the end, I remember Toby didn't even need to redo them anymore because he just wouldn't do them and he'd freehand them. And it worked out perfectly. But yeah, they're such pros. It's just a wonderful, supportive group of folks.
Sounds lovely. And obviously you spend so much time working with them, the relationship just gets closer and closer and enjoyable as well. But like you said at the beginning of this, you mentioned that you go through the studio, you've obviously meet the other developers, you cross paths with them, you see the awards. And with this, Webb's obviously Webb's not directing, but Zak Garriss is. And while Webb is going to be leading these sessions, I kind of wanted to know, did Zak ever turn up on set for these? Was he ever there? Did you ever meet him?
I've met Zak. He was there. The standout time that I remember him being in the room was we did a big table read with all of the folks for the episode 5 scene when Alex comes in. And I don't know, spoilers, are we okay mentioning?
Of course.
Okay, great.
Yeah. Let's go for it. I feel like you've had a lot of time to play Life is Strange True Colors. If you haven't right now, come back to this interview, but we're going to spoiler territory shortly here.
Great. So in the scene when Alex comes in after being shot, And she's walking in and all the town folks are there, and they're having their town council meeting. We couldn't shoot that all together as an ensemble because there just wasn't enough mocap suits. There wasn't a scheduling. It was hard to work out. But we did get everyone in the room for a table read of that scene so that the actors and the writers could sense what it would be like to have everyone together in the same space and what the timing would look like and what the blocking would look like. So that was a really exciting day because I finally got to meet a lot of the other folks that I never actually interacted with in the cast. And Zak, I'm positive Zak was there for that day. And I think that may have been one of the only times I crossed paths with him at Deck 9. I have seen him supporting the local theater community, which is amazing. As an audience member, I've sat kitty corner behind him or next to him for various shows when he goes to see theater and I happen to be there. So that's been really cool, running into him and seeing that he supports the local theater here.
No, that's absolutely cool. And even the table read as well, it makes sense as well, because obviously that's in that scene as well, it's so heavy with the acting, you kind of want everyone there. I did try to figure that out because I did a lot of time spending in terms of looking at the actual mocap set and even talking to Webb as well. It wasn't, a AAA Quantic Dream style where they have a massive mocap set of loads of actors. So that for them to kind of think of that way of doing it and actually shooting it does make sense. And it's really quite fascinating. And I kind of mentioned Webb there because I kind of want to fold him back into this before we move away from him completely for the rest of the interview. No offense, Webb. But we kind of just want to bring him in because in your lifetime as an actor, you're going to spend a lot of time working with directors and managers, stage managers in theatre. Well, and with Webb, you've worked with him for a long time in the development of this game. I kind of wanted to know, what was the experience like working under him and his tutelage, and specifically what you took away from the experience? What's the thing that you found very valuable, what he taught you as a director on set as an actor? And was there something that he kind of tapped into a moment of your performance which you never thought you would actually get out of it, but then he was like, try this. It was and it worked out for you.
That's a great question. I think one thing that I will take away from working with Webb on True Colors is finding that balance between almost film and theater. As coming into the video game world and understanding and learning this new medium, it's very interesting because you have everything picking up your facial expressions. So you want almost a nuanced film-like quality performance in your face. But at the same time, things do have to be a little bit bigger so that it does read. Because if you do something so small, it's not going to get picked up by the facial capture. And so Webb was really helpful in guiding me to find that happy balance between what I already knew from my theater background and what I'm starting to learn from doing more film work, which is the more nuanced, tiny performance. And he was really great in guiding me through that. Another thing which I already mentioned is something simple, just by talking more slowly to really, you have to be so clear on your intentions and what you're doing and what your objective is. And him helping me find those and then also slowing down just the pace of how I'm talking so that it works more and it translates better for the voiceover work was helpful as well.
That's fascinating because I always think that some people just think you go as an actor and because you have stage background and theatre background, you can just take it all the way across into this. And it's not necessarily the case because when I interviewed one of the actors for this series, she had a massive theatre background with Shakespeare. She studied Shakespeare. She knew it so well. And in the game that Webb made Before the Storm, they do the Tempest scene. But she told me I can't go in there as a professional actor pretending to be this 16-year-old kid doing a scene from The Tempest because it doesn't make sense. I have to really tone it so far down that you change perspective. And I think the way that you learned that experience is really quite a testament to your direction under Webb and also just as yourself working with him. So love hearing that. And we'll move away from Webb now as well because we will talk about it.
We'll miss you, Webb.
Everyone misses Webb. But we'll move into the mocap side. And obviously I mentioned Erika Mori before, but a lot of people you got to work with this project, including Katy Bentz as well. I know Katy as well from many, many years ago, and she worked on the series prior to this. But I kind of wanted to ask you, what was the experience like meeting those actors on set when you did at different times, then going on the journey with them together, the kind of like, and getting to the point where you did now? And obviously we know the relationship with Erika Mori, but also like all the other actors you worked with.
Yeah, the main folks that I had the opportunity to work with, of course, Erika was one. Jim Hunt, who played Ducky, was another one of the actors that I got to work closely with, who's a local here in Colorado and just amazing. And then I worked with Eric, who played Ryan, and Katy, who played Steph, in that episode 3 scene is the one that stands out the most. And it was a really exciting day when I got to meet those folks. They flew Eric and Katy in from LA. And I remember thinking like, oh my gosh, they have so much experience in these games. And Katy had been in Before the Storm and they were bringing her back. And I met her and she was so down to earth and so lovely and just going along for the ride, and so grateful and happy to be there just like I was. And we immediately clicked, and it was just a really fun day on set. And I remember having snacks in the actor breakout room, and I left her a little note. I left her and Eric a little note saying like, have a great rest of your shoot days, because they were in town for 3 days, but I only came in for one of the 3. So it was really great. And Katy and I have kept in touch since, and chatted, and hope to get together next time she's out in Colorado or when I go to LA. So it's really fun seeing the lasting relationships you can form and the bonds that happen from working on something like this and seeing where they go in the future. I'm excited to continue chilling with these folks.
I can imagine so. And Katy, like as I said, I followed her career for a long time. She came on the show I think was it last year? Last year, I think she came on here, which was bit, obviously she didn't tell me she was under NDA, but I kind of figured that out whilst I was doing things with that. I had an assumption that she did. So maybe she'll come back. But we'll kind of go into the mocap at this point, which is obviously, I want to ask you, what's the standout favorite segment? You have all these actors, you did a lot of scenes in this thing. What's the one that really stands out for you?
I've got to say it's probably a tie between the episode 3 scene where Steph and Ryan come up and flirt with Diane, and the end scene where they're all talking at the council meeting. Those would tie in my mind.
We'll come on to one of those scenes in a little bit, and they're good choices as well. And obviously, I'm not going to ask you who your favorite actor is, because that's just mean, but I kind of changed this around in terms of a lot of wonderful actors, table reads, you got to meet them. But was there one actor you wish you had the chance to work with a little bit longer? If I gave you the chance, I somehow took control of that, and I was like, Anastasia, you have a chance to work with one more person for a longer scene, just the opportunity to kind of flesh out a scene with Diane and that character. Was there someone that you wished maybe you had a bit more time with on set?
I would have loved to have worked at all with Han Soto. I think because Gabe was already gone by the time I really came in and started shooting, I've actually never met Han in person. So I would love the opportunity to meet him and work with him. And I think it could have been really cool to have seen more. We hint in True Colors about the relationship they had, and how Diane was always hanging out at the Black Lantern, and Gabe, of course, was there bartending, and they had a bit of a relationship. And I think it could have been really cool to see some of their history flushed out a little bit more. So I think I'll pick Han Soto in this case.
It's a good choice as well, and he's very active on Twitter. Very active on Twitter. I've seen how much he supports his character and loves him. But I'm very surprised that you didn't meet everyone. I thought maybe that there would have been a point where you actually all crossed paths, but obviously the development was long. How long was the development that you were on this project for? Do you remember?
I want to say it was about 2.5 years. And I'm still hoping that we all will meet at one point. I'm hoping that there's some big event that we can go to where we gather everyone together. I think that because of the pandemic and because of everything that happened, there may have been opportunities to get the whole group together and to kind of celebrate everything. But because of everything that had happened, it made it difficult. So I'm still holding out hope that we'll get us all together for some reason or another.
I think that's the best way of looking at it. And I hopefully you all do get to meet and and kind of be in the same room. But you kind of touched on something which was going to be my next thing. This project came with its tasks of obviously the pandemic hitting in between it. You know, it's a long development process. The pandemic hits. I was reading a lot about when Webb was talking about the mocap, and then also the challenges to adapt to scenes that were done whilst COVID was going on, that they were on like a call whilst I think like Erika Mori was doing a shoot on her own and she was just like in a room. So it's kind of like they're zooming in and we can't actually be there with her on set. And it changes like the landscape of how that industry works. You bring in masks, you bring in everything else, and then just the project in general. But I kind of wanted to ask you what was going through your mind at this point? Because obviously you've landed a massive gig, you're working on it, an unexpected pandemic hits. And then was it like in your mind that you thought that the project was going to get shelved indefinitely? Do you think that you were going to continue the way that you did? And then how was it just as an actor adapting to the challenges of working in a pandemic with your directors zooming in, if you did any scenes during that?
I did do some work during the pandemic. It never crossed my mind that the project would get shelved, and I'm really grateful because that would have really bummed me out. So I'm glad that that didn't cross my mind. I had wrapped shooting right before everything hit with the pandemic. I had my last day on set. And it was such a wonderful day, and Deck 9 gave me a card and we took pictures and I kind of had a little bit of closure. And then, so that was, I don't know the timeline of it all. That may have been around February, maybe, that I wrapped my shooting, February 2020. And then summer rolled around, we were deep in lockdown. I hadn't done anything. I had one day where all of my jobs got canceled on, I think it was a Friday, and just in March, and just one after another, I got emails coming in with all my jobs getting canceled, and it was devastating. And I can't quite remember the month, but Webb and Corwin reached out to me, and I was wrapped. Diane was wrapped, but Erika, of course, was still working. They had a lot of content they still had to work out for her. And they ended up writing some more VO for Diane that they didn't realize that they were going to want in the game or need in the game. And so they contacted me and said, we've got some more VO work. And I like flipped because I hadn't done a lot in a couple of months, and it was really exciting to have another opportunity. And they said, this is the first time we're going to try this. We haven't done it yet with Erika, but we're thinking that we're going to deliver all of this VO equipment to your home, and we will teach you how to set it up. You can record from home. We'll be listening in, and that's how we're going to get the content. And so for a couple of days, it was almost like I was in some kind of spy movie, like Ocean's 11 or something, where they tell you exactly how you're going to walk in the room and like what wires you need to connect to what. And so Webb came to my house one morning. He had all of this equipment. We were both masked. We both had gloves on. We had all these sanitizing wipes, and he would put things on my front porch. I would wipe them down and bring them in one by one. And then I went upstairs and set it all up in my bathroom closet because it was the best space with all my clothes around, with the carpeting and everything. And I set up all the VO equipment with the Scarlett box and the headphones and the microphone and the everything. And it went really well. I think that the stuff that I recorded is in the game, which is great, and it sounded great. And Chuck, our voice guy, he came into the call, and Corwin was there, and Webb, and it was a really great experience. I was just glad I didn't mess it up because I am not. I don't know a whole lot about tech, and Eric, who does, was like on work calls all day, so I didn't really have him to help me out. But yeah, it worked out really well. And after that, it inspired me with all of that equipment they had. I asked Webb and Chuck if they would send me a list of everything I used that day. And I purchased most of that equipment. And now I have my own home voiceover studio in one of my walk-in closets. So it worked out.
It did work out. And I think like obviously, so that you don't want to mess it up. But I think the worst thing would have been if you did all that effort and the content looks hot and you're just like, all this extra effort goes into it and then it gets taken out. I've seen it many times with actors who film so much stuff and then it gets taken out. Well, I imagine obviously with that kind of task, I know people who set up their own home studios and were like doing VO work from there. So it was a big challenging moment for the industry and just challenging in general. And we're going to move away from the motion capture. And this is just out of my own curiosity. Did you ever meet Cara's cat, the wonderful Suzu, who plays Valkyrie? I know she wasn't motion captured, but did you meet the cat?
I never met her, and I didn't even know there was a cat in the game until I saw the trailer where they introduce all the main people in the cast, and then Valkyrie came out, and I was like, oh, I didn't even know that there was a cat in this. That's cool. So no, I never got to meet her.
I thought I'd ask because obviously I know Cara, just in general, she's a lovely human being. And then when I was on web stream, I was like, how was it motion capturing the cat? And he was like, you think we motion captured the cat? I was like, yeah, I've seen dogs getting motion captured. You must have motion captured it. And like, no, we didn't. We just used the meows and voicing. I was like, I thought maybe they brought the cat on set to show the other actors, but I would have felt very unfulfilled if I didn't ask that during this episode. So got to ask it.
Sorry for my disappointing answer. I was thrilled to see that we had a little friendly, well, not so friendly, but a little kitty cat in the game, but I had no idea.
So we'll move away from the motion capture. So much talk about the motion capture, but I kind of wanted to ask you, and you saw the animations of Diane, you saw everything in the earlier stage, but what was the first impressions when you saw what she looked like? And obviously, I know that most actors aren't really well versed in the gaming world, but we do facial capture. Were you very surprised by how much they took from the likeness? I was like, when I put a headshot of yours next to Diane, I was like, wow. I was like, it really does. It really does capture it.
I was surprised at how much translates from the physicality and your expressions onto the animated character. I originally didn't think I looked anything like Diane. They had kind of already had the prototype for her. And it's interesting how when you put a physicality and expressions on someone, how they start to almost take on your own looks in a way, even though when you just see a flat picture of her, I don't actually see a whole lot of resemblance. But I've had so many of my friends who played the game be like, she is you, like that looks like you. And I'm like, oh, really?
Well, because I know that sometimes you don't always hit the likeness, and from well back when I was doing these interviews, like the Before Storm characters, I said that I think that they might have taken a likeness from them because they had cameras when they came in to do their shoots and like during their VO sessions, but it wasn't the case. They had already made some, but some of the actors look so much like their characters. I just made the natural assumption from that. And I kind of looked when I was looking at your picture with Diane, I was like, I see it. I like see parts of it, or is it because I'm just thinking that? So it's interesting to hear your perspective on that. And we're going to get a bit more philosophical at this point, because obviously we're going into Diane. She's considered the secondary antagonist in this, obviously playing a part in Gabe's death, and also covering up the story with what's happening with Alex. She can't let her know what's going on. But where does Anastasia stand on? Is she the secondary antagonist, or is she someone just caught in the crossfire with all the Typhon fiasco, who's just kind of doing her job?
That's such a complicated question. I think it's a little of both. I think that originally Diane was going to be one of basically the main antagonist. And then the story changed a lot and they started to weave in Jed's character and throw a lot of curveballs, which I'm glad they did, so that it wasn't so heavy-handed. And I think the writers did just a beautiful job in kind of guiding that story and bringing it to where they did. I think that I'm very interested in believable villains, because, no one is born evil, hopefully, for the most part. No one is born that way. It's based on a series of choices that they've made throughout their lives, good or bad, or right or wrong. And I think that because of that, there's so much gray area. And although I see her as a human being who has made some really horrific, just unforgivable choices, I don't necessarily see her as a bad person per se. It's just the byproduct of what was given to her and the choices that she made for it. Do I think that she could have made a lot of different choices. Absolutely. Should she have? Yes, for sure. But I have a hard time seeing her as inherently bad.
Yeah, I agree as well. I don't really go down that and have to think in the same way of you, where it's like, I think she was stuck with that. And it kind of bounces on to my next question, which was that Diane was very representative of, someone working in the corporate world, wants to climb up the ladder, will keep quiet, will do the cover up stuff. Kind of flew over my head at first. I didn't really take it in the way that my co-host and my Strange Cast show, Adam, saw it, where he's like, she's very PR representative. And I was like, PR, HR, PR, that kind of role. But I kind of want to ask you, did you have any background into that, like in having previously worked in a corporate world? And if not, like, what was the kind of preparation that you did for this as like an actor to kind of get into it? Because like I said, you're a lovely person. You're playing this character who's like really like folding her arms and everything. But like, how did you tap into that?
I personally I've never worked in the corporate world. I'm very grateful that I haven't. And I've just been in this lovely arts realm in many different facets. Mm-hmm. But my dad worked for years and years at GE. And he worked at corporate. So growing up, knowing him in that role and what a big corporation, the pressures that they can put on people. And my dad didn't have a bad experience working for GE at all. He actually had a really positive experience, and that's why he was there for so many years. But at the same time, it's such a different world than what I'm used to and what I have been working professionally in during my career. And so I was able to come at it from a point of somewhat understanding and having empathy for what it must feel like to be in a position where you think you have to, you think that you have to make certain decisions or else you're done for, or else it's the end of your career. It's the end of your life. And Diane is in a position where she thinks that this is it. And she has spent her entire life working, climbing the ladder. She's smart, she's savvy, she's business minded. And I'm sure she puts a lot of pressure on herself. And she thinks that her family puts pressure on her, even though I don't think they necessarily do. It's everything that you're putting on yourself. And so she just finds herself in a position where she thinks that this is her only path. And that's really unfortunate, but that's where she's stuck.
I completely agree. With how you see it. And with that, this is your character. What's your favorite thing about her?
I like how they introduce how much she misses home and her family. She mentions her nieces and nephews, and I have 3 nephews and a niece, and I miss them all the time. They're just my favorite people. And so I could really connect with her on that level. And I think that I'm glad they brought that aspect of Diane into it, because I think that it really taps into her more human, loving, caring side. And I do love how smart she is. And I find it endearing how awkward she is.
They're the best characters in Life is Strange, are the really awkward ones. And when you get one of those characters, you have to love them. And with this, I'm going to give you, if hypothetically speaking, I gave Anastasia the power to change or add something to Diane, what would she do? Would you change anything? Would you add something that if you had the opportunity?
This kind of messes with the brilliant storytelling. So I'm a little torn about my answer, but I think the way Diane's story worked out is best for True Colors. Me as Anastasia, I would say that in episode 5, when Diane listens to everything Alex has to say, and when Alex comes in clearly hurt, clearly something's going on, and Diane has enough, she's smart enough to know that this is crap. So I may change her reaction there when Diane, and it's such a, it makes me mad when I even hear the line, but when Diane says, "We're embarrassed for you, Alex," like that, I would have changed the way she handled that situation. That is a moment where Diane could have redeemed herself in a way that was bigger than how she ended up redeeming herself. And I think that I would have chosen a different response there.
Very good response. I like it. Well thought out as well. Well, you mentioned it before as well earlier in this. We're going to chapter 3, which is a monster or more. beginning part. I kind of have to ask you, Anastasia, we're at the beginning of the scene. Who do you pick as your distraction, Steph or Ryan?
Okay. So I'm playing through the game. I'm not completely finished with it yet. I'm taking my time. I'm uncovering everything. I chose Steph as my distraction, but I think they're both equally fun options. I've actually watched the playthrough of both of them, and they're super fun. One reason why I wanted to pick Steph is because Diane herself is awkward. Extremely so, especially in romantic situations. And so pairing her with Ryan is just awkward with awkward. Yeah. I mean, like Ryan almost is more awkward than Diane is in that scene somehow. And Diane almost has the upper hand a little bit, I don't know, from my perspective. So I was interested to choose Steph because Steph is so confident and just comes in owning the place, and she really knocks Diane off her little pedestal for a bit. And that was really fun for me to play out in the game. So I chose Steph.
It's a very good choice with Steph. And I just thought about this instead. So say if we bring the scenario into the real world, and we're playing this out and we're in the bar and Anastasia's behind the bar and she has Erika Mori and Katy Bentz in front of her. Does she still stick with Katy Bentz as a person to go and distract Diane, or do you go with Erika Mori? Who would be the best alternate at that point?
Oh, Katy or Erika to distract Diane? I think I'm still going to go with, well, wait. As their characters, as Steph and...
As you know them as well.
Oh my goodness, this is a really hard one because they're both so funny and they could both do so well with improv. I may choose Erika just because I'd like to see what she does. Erika is hilarious. So I feel like she could come up with some really good distraction techniques, and maybe some would be a little heavy-handed, but they would be amazing. So yeah, I'd like to see that.
I can imagine. So I watched an interview with the Life is Strange team on their YouTube channel, and she was talking about Mortal Kombat. I could see there's just like, I feel like we saw a different side of Erika Mori compared to like the Alex Chen quiet, awkward character that we saw. So very good choice. And no hard feelings, Katy, either, for being left out of that. But
oh no, Katy would be an amazing choice. That was was a Sophie's choice you gave me right there.
Yeah, it's a very, very difficult, but I thought I'd throw in there. But we kind of mentioned it before, but I kind of wanted to dig in a bit more. Haven Springs, Anastasia, Deck 9, I watched their video where they went behind the scenes and they kind of like showed the inspiration from Idaho Springs. And then everyone is falling in love with it, but you live there in Colorado and then you've immersed yourself in the culture. There's so much that you can absorb yourself. Like you walk down the street, you'll probably just see a building and it looks like something from Haven Springs. But I kind of want to say, like, you now sat down, played the game, seen the pictures, it's your background. What was it like seeing it come to life? And then were you like really blown away by how surreal they kind of like really integrated that culture and everything in there?
It's unbelievable. The game is just so gorgeous, and yet it's so realistic in the way it captured some of these Colorado mountain towns. And you're right, I am going to forever, when I'm in a Colorado mountain town, I will look around and I will think of this game because it's so beautifully done. They definitely drew inspiration from Idaho Springs for sure. I almost feel like they drew inspiration from a lot of different mountain towns. Mm-hmm. I'm in a production right now in Golden, Colorado, which is also a very adorable old mountain town that I can see some inspiration having been drawn from. And I also see a lot of Telluride, Colorado, which is a gorgeous ski town up in the mountains. It's about, I want to say it's like an 8-hour drive for me from where I live outside of Denver. But I was shooting a national commercial up in Telluride in March when the trailer for Life is Strange True Colors dropped. And I remember being there and looking around the town that I was in, seeing the mountains, seeing the way the mountains cut into this river. And then the trailer dropped and I saw the game and it was unbelievable. I was blown away at how just, it's gorgeous. I think I read one thing that said, this is like an ad for Colorado. And I was like, it really is.
It really is, because I grew up watching South Park, and obviously that's based in Colorado, cartoonish, and like the buildings, I was like, oh, it's just snowy. It's like, it has to be snowy. And then when I played True Colors now, I was like, is everything snowy in Colorado? Is it all like this? But no, I love that you, obviously the mountain towns, everything's so set, and I love that. And I think moving on to the next topic, you kind of mentioned about, obviously I do a lot of snooping before these interviews, and you got your copy of True Colors, and you mentioned you're playing through it. I don't know where you're up to at this point in terms of, did you get to Alex Chen's love interest route? Have you gone down Steph, Ryan, or simply friends? Have you decided yet? Or are you at that point?
I did give a rose to Steph at the Spring Festival. So that happened, but nothing else has happened between us yet. So we're kind of like on the edge of some exciting romance.
It's a good choice. I chose Steph as well. I generally, because I was like, I felt like that was, for me, I thought that was the route they were going to go with, but they kept it open for all the way through that. But kind of before we wrap out anyway, I kind of want to talk to you, Alex Chen, empathy, power, all the kind of like selling points. What was it like when you learned more about the story, learned about her, the power, everything about
her? I was surprised when I learned how much we could do with her power. I didn't realize originally that, I knew that the choices that we made would affect the game, because that is the Life is Strange format, but I didn't realize that we could then go back and have new dialogue with folks based on what we've learned from them. I thought that was super cool. And I'm also a little terrified by her superpower. It's such I just understand why she struggles with it so much, because it's such a blessing and a burden. And I just got to the point in the game, and I have regrets. I chose to take away Charlotte's anger.
I did the same.
Is it episode 3 or episode 4? I can't remember.
I think it might be 4. I'm going to say it's 4.
Okay. So I just have gotten to that point. I chose to take away her anger, and now some crazy stuff is happening, and I have regrets, and I don't know if she's going to be okay or not. And it really made me reflect on the fact that Alex has this ability to make people feel better, which you want to do, but you also have to allow humans to go through that process of grieving. And Charlotte, in these 7 stages, she is in the anger stage, and it's something that she needs to feel no matter how hard it may be. She needs to feel it. And I, as Alex, took that away from her because I didn't want her to feel sad or angry or and now she doesn't have feelings. And I just got to the point on the dock where Charlotte's just blankly staring out at the river, and Alex comes down, and I don't know where it's going to go from here. And I'm almost afraid to keep playing because I feel like I've ruined her. And the fact that this game is making me feel all these feels just is a testament to how amazing it is and how great the writing is, and just choices. They impact everything.
Oh, boy, I'm getting a lot of flashbacks where you're talking about, because I felt the exact same way, because I took the exact same route, and I was like, there's a lot of repercussions here for me to deal with. I just kind of was like, oh, she looks pretty upset, we'll just take it. And then afterwards I was like, maybe she should have dealt with this herself. I was like, oh, ouch. I didn't think that about all the way through.
I have no idea what's going to happen. I'm very scared.
I'm sure it will be okay, depending on other choices you made. But I won't spoil anything else. We'll kind of move into the final section. So as I said before, I've reformatted this show, and we are going to a rapid fire questions. Are you ready, Anastasia?
I am ready.
Okay, so the dream role, the theatre production, and the character.
Okay, so I said I was ready, but I don't have an answer for this. It's almost embarrassing to me that I don't have a dream role and character, because I feel like theater has been my life and my career, and I should, so that I can manifest something brilliant into being. But I truly whatever project I am currently working on, I become so invested in it that it is my dream. It is my dream role and my dream character. Right now I'm doing The Crucible by Arthur Miller at Miners Alley Playhouse, and I'm playing the role of Elizabeth Proctor, which is a dream come true for me. And so that I'm kind of so invested in that. I will say, to put something out there and manifest it, I have a dream of someday performing in the West End in London or at the National Theatre. That would be like the absolute for me. So I would love to put that out there.
I'd love to come and see it as well. And the UK is a great place, and it's a dream place to come for theatre. So hopefully that happens. And I'll accept your answer as well. But we'll move on to popular franchise, whether film, TV, or gaming. Which one would you want to work in?
Oh, out of all, between those three, which one do I want to work in?
Yeah, in any of those, and then like a popular franchise, so Spider-Man, X-Men, is there anything like, what would be the dream?
If I had to choose between the three, I think I may say television, and to be able to do something like an HBO original or an Apple TV original, somewhere along the lines of Big Little Lies or The Morning Show. I think that could be really cool.
Oh, that's a really cool answer. I didn't expect that. I thought it'd be like Star Wars or something. So I like that answer. Anastasia's spirit animal.
A golden eagle.
Oh, very good choice. Will that be the same for Diane as well?
Ooh. No, I don't think it would. But I don't know what Diane's would be. I might.
It would be too harsh to say cockroach, but
I was thinking of something more heroic, like a mountain lion, but cockroaches, yeah, that's not bad.
I feel like maybe Han Solo would say that with his character's death, but I'll take your answer for the eagle. It's a very good choice. Favorite actor?
I admire and respect Laura Linney. I think that her career, between the work that she's done in theater and television and film, is just outstanding. And I think that she does really honest work, and I would love to follow in her shoes and her career path. So today's answer is Laura Linney.
It's a good shout. I know most actors don't even know them as I'm an actor. I don't know who my favorite actor is, but at least I have one there. Acting skill you want to learn in the next 5 years that you don't know right now?
This is something that I know, but I would love to get more familiar with film work. I think that I have a lot to learn, and it just takes a lot of repetition and hands-on experience. And so I would love to really dive more into film work in the next 5 years and I would love to see myself doing a lot more projects in television and film.
Great choice. And we close out this rapid fire question with the hardest and the final question, which is, what is the secret behind making the perfect chocolate chip cookie?
Do I give it away? I don't know. Yes, I think the secret behind a really good chocolate chip cookie is letting the dough rest. There is something to it, it's called aging or resting. And even if you only have about a half an hour to let your dough rest before you bake, it can affect the outcome of the cookie for the better. And if you've got like 3 days to pop that dough in the fridge and let it age in the refrigerator for a couple days, I think it greatly improves the quality of your cookie. Especially for chocolate chip.
Michelin star tips right there. And if anyone's wondering why I got that question, if you go on Anastasia's Instagram profile, there is an incredible batch of cookies that she made. And we could have dealt with the entire fiasco in Haven Springs a long time ago if your character had handed all those out. Everyone would have forgot about everything. But yeah, Anastasia, at the end, thank you so much for coming on. I loved having you here. I'd love kicking off this second part of this series with you and as the first actor from True Colours. And I hope everyone enjoyed watching this. If you did, please leave a comment, like, subscribe. It really helps my channel. Anastasia, thank you so much. Many more things come. Can't wait to see what other game you're working on and when the NDA is lifted. Would love to hear more about that game. But yeah, guys, stay tuned. Hopefully there'll be more actors to come. I'm sure there will be. But yeah, take care, guys.
Thank you for having me.